Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to the Golden Age. Today, I have the absolute honor and privilege to speak with the Goblin Works. He is one of the key artistic voices that's kind of helping to shape the soul of Monsters and Memories. Whenever you look at his art, it feels familiar almost instantly. It's very hard to describe into words, but there's something classic in it. There's something dangerous, adventurous, and kind of like comforting all at once. His work doesn't just show you a fantasy world, it makes you want to step into it. You can feel the danger, the mystery, the atmosphere. And like this sense that there's something meaningful just kind of waiting there, like behind the trees or over the next hill or down the corridor, or even like deep in the dark where your party probably shouldn't be going. What makes his art stand out to me is that it just feels so lived in and it feels intentional. And yet, the way that the goblins, specifically in like characters, are depicted, there's something very intimate there. There's something very delicate and kind of like real, you know? So it's not about just like armor and monsters and landscapes for the sake of looking cool, but there's real mood and real identity and just a real sense of place. So if you love Monsters and Memories, if you feel like the game already has a soul, Goblin Works is a huge part of why that is. And so I'm really excited for this conversation. Thank you so much, Goblin, and let's get into it. So for people that don't know you yet, so who are you, and how did you get involved with the Monsters and Memories team? What kind of pulled you into this project? Maybe just kind of let's start with the origin there.
Yeah, so I go by Goblin, and that username has kind of stuck with me for quite a long time. And I've been essentially, I went through university trying to become an artist. And during university, I found that game design and game dev is really what I wanted to do. So I started making a couple different projects over the time. All of them failed. But eventually, I used a lot of those skills that I had to work on something called Witherhome, which was me and one other person, Bryles. And essentially, we made some really great progress on this little horror indie title that still hasn't released to this day, but is very polished now, which is kind of funny. But while I was working on Witherhome, I was like looking at other projects and trying to figure out like, oh, is there something that I could bring? Like I'm looking at like Ashes of Creation, and I'm looking at like New World, and I'm not very happy with the way that the race design, the MMO race design, kind of was like working in those games. And so I went out of my way to like kind of I posted on the AOC forums saying, "Hey, look, here's these race designs that I really think that you guys should be doing, and or like leaning into." And I didn't get anything back from them. Of course, I was just some artist, posting on their forums. Like, of course they're not going to see me. But then afterwards, I went to like other discords and tried to see different projects that were in flux or that I could help out with. That was an MMO, because it kind of hit me that I had something that I wanted to give instead of something that I wanted from the industry, right? Like I didn't want to get into the industry anymore. It was like, no, actually, the industry is getting things wrong, and I can help it. like I actually had something to give. And so I found myself at the Pantheon Discord, their community Discord, not the official, because I think at that point the official Discord was locked for people that were paying to play. And from there, I asked around, and some comments led me to Monsters and Memories, and I just sent Sean a message and sent him my work, and he was like, "Okay, what's this weird goblin guy that draws a bunch of naked goblins? So what's going on with this guy?" And we had a call, and he seemed to like my stuff, so he took a risk, and now I'm on the Monsters and Memories team.
Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. I wanted to ask. So the first project you mentioned, it was a. Did you mention it was a Polish horror? That's very interesting, and I believe that's on Steam, correct? That's kind of in the works. I believe I have that wish listed. That's actually a really cool project. Yeah. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, well, not quite Polish. It's just a indie horror game. It's kind of like the genre is kind of hit. What is it called? Like the name for it now is kind of like friend slop, But this was something that we worked on a lot. Well, we didn't even know that the term friend slop existed, so we were just trying to make a horror game that beckoned back to a little bit of the Silent Hill and Resident Evil, where you had like tank controls, and a lot of the horror came from your ability to run away rather than just instant running or instant like first person, where the controls are really nice and neat. So part of the controls there is the game is quite polished now, and I'm quite happy with it. But yeah, that's where that comes from, is Witherhome.
There once was a town a lot like this one, where children cry a familiar poem. A priestess child by flame defiled, who never can or will leave home. The town was raised by fire of sky. The girl burns alive, yet refuses to die. The light of youth, forever it burns. But children like you never learn.
Okay, interesting. No, that's very beautiful. Yeah, that caught my attention as well. I'm a huge horror fan as well, so I really like that aesthetic.
Yeah, there's something about they're kind of cute, but it's also like super dark, and you want to be laughing at your friends as they die, and then as the creature turns to you, then you're scared. And we do a lot of work to make sure that aesthetic actually appeals and does its job right.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So okay, so interesting. And then so you sent Sean a message, and you got involved with the team, and so your art is amazing. So I want to ask, whenever you hear like classic fantasy or just anything that kind of follows this vibe, what does that mean to you, like from an artist perspective, like visually, emotionally, spiritually?
Yeah, classic fantasy is like I grew up with Frank Frazetta, and I was like, this guy's just the coolest thing ever. I loved his work, but more recently, like looking at when I joined the project, things kind of changed. I was introduced to a lot of other fantasy artists that before I'd kind of just shrugged, because I was like, yeah, I wasn't. But there is a lot of amazing work that kind of goes into that. So you think those classic D&D covers where you have like a dragon and you have your party like going after them and everything, and they're really striking. I would say something like that I notice a lot of them have is they have a lot of local color. So that means like if you have a red cape, that cape will look red, and the environment won't hit too much of it because they're trying to hit like a very realistic sort of like take on things. There were there was like photography before, or sorry, there was like fantasy paintings before, and then photography kind of said, "Hey, realism is can be doable," but then people were like, "Yeah, but you can't, take a photograph of a dragon," and so they started painting realistic again and started doing a lot of that, a lot of really great fantasy work. I like, yeah, the believability that kind of comes from it. So like Paul Bonner is a great artist that I think of. He exaggerates a lot of the proportions, and but then he reels it back, and he goes, okay, now I'm going to render this as if it were real, so it looks realistic, and that's kind of the illusion that they're selling you a lot of the times is like, here's this thing, and it could be real, very much could be real. Um, Emotionally, I would say the sense of adventure, like I want, there's a lot of that stuff that we realized with Monsters and Memories when I was doing some paintings. There's this painting of this deep dwarf, and it's like from the bottom up, where it's like really heavy perspective, kind of looks like a League of Legends splash art. And something didn't stick right with me on that because it was like, okay, this is the character, but like, where's the adventure? And so it took a little bit of time to look at the references and that we were looking at, so the other artists that we were looking at, and I came up with this thing called 3P, which is party, place, and peril. And our pieces should have like a combination of those three. And so your party is referenced there because it's a MMO, and being for Monsters and Memories. The place is there because the world is a character, and then the peril is there to beg you to go adventure into. And so that's kind of the emotional part, is I want that adventure to set in, and that tends to help. Leaning into archetypes also is like pretty big for me. And then spiritually, I guess the last thing would be that whatever it is that I do, people go like, wow, that's from this guy, and so it's like I like to follow my intuition a lot. So Paul Bonner, as I said before, he writes about this, following your intuition and the setting out where only you can set out instead of with reference first. And then Yoshitaka Amano is definitely, so he's the guy that does Final Fantasy.
He's
Final
amazing.
Fantasy Beast. Yeah, he's just phenomenal. And he takes a lot of time to just set out by himself and do what he wants to do. And something that he can only do. And so spiritually, I'd like to say that, when people look at my work, they go, yeah, that's Goblin's work.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Sorry, I kind of rambled on a little bit there.
No, that's amazing. And I love that so much because for me, just kind of EverQuest was my sort of so was my baseline, but the box art really captivated me, and that's kind of the impression that I get with Monsters and Memories. Keith Parkinson is amazing, but as you said, like I love those old and I'm not as like deep into it, but like like those old, like the classic fantasy novels, and it does, you said it's very striking. That's a really good way to put it. Just this like sense of like adventure and like kind of like heroicism, and like party and peril. That's exactly the vibe that I get from the Monsters and Memories art. And just while you were talking, comes to mind like the one with the party kind of deep in the dungeon with that dragon, and then the one with like the ship kind of on the ocean and that big octopus underneath it. It's beautiful. The Wormsbane, like the adventurers getting ready to go into Wormsbane. It really slaps.
And it doesn't have to be a monster for peril. It can just be a foreboding place. A lot of those 3Ps, and sometimes they end up only being like 2 of 3, or and I've played around with the ratios, and it seems 3P has like the winning kind of thing, where it's like a pretty even split is like, oh, that's a really good piece. But there have been some where it's just party. There have been some where it's just where it's really just placed. I think of the Elven city painting that I did that's just place, and it's been a journey, kind of like finding out what really works and trying to hit that classic aesthetic.
Beautiful, beautiful. And so, what do you want players to feel when they first see Monsters and Memories art before they even know any of the lore? I think you pretty much just touched on a lot of that, but is there anything more to add there?
Yeah, the 3P for sure. So that's the adventure. I would like that when people look at it, they like eventually they can say, "Wow, that's iconic," and I mean that's I assume that's everybody's goal, at some point is to, but in this case, yeah, and I guess also like a little bit of home, like, or like comfort, where they go like, oh, like we're back here. Like in there's something about that. A little bit of adventure, a little bit of home, a little bit of iconic. Ideally, like, I want people to be able to feel like they could step into the world as those characters, as those parties, or face those dangers, etc.
Beautiful. And do you have a piece that you've done that kind of feels the most you, and why? Is there anything that you're the most proud of that kind of stands out?
I'm a little like, maybe this is okay. So I'm a little like torn on this. There's like two ways to approach it. One is like, what is the most me right now? And like I can think about some of the most recent pieces that I have done that I'm really happy with and proud of, and the way that they've technically come out. Like a piece ago or so, I did the Minotaur or the Sphinx, and I'm not even done those. Well, I finished the Sphinx, but the Sphinx is really something that I was dreading over, because everybody, there's so many great Sphinxes in video games now. Well, there's two that I can think of that just blow me out of the water, and I'm like, okay, let's try and live up to that. But then another part of me kind of goes, like, this is the work that I do for Monsters and Memories, and it's not something that I necessarily would have ever found on myself. And so if I were to do work for myself, what would it look like now? I used to do these paintings once every year that was exclusively just me. So it wasn't like me trying to do Monsters of Memory stuff. It was just like me trying to remember who I am as an artist. And there is a piece that I could share with you, that I kind of go, oh yeah, this is me. And it's funny because it's so not rendered. Here, I'll send it to you.
Oh, thank you so much.
So you can have a reference of it.
Thank you so much. And even just while we're talking too, I was one of my favorites is, I absolutely love the it's a sort of like the Goblin King or Lord, and it's kind of like in that. I love like the just the color palette in general. There is something like you pretty much said it. There's something kind of dangerous, but yet it's something cozy at the same time. It's something familiar in a way. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the goblin on the throne, but it's from the perspective, it's like he's kind of lonely and isolated, but there's also something dangerous there. It's this little undead-looking monster, basically, in this like lonely tomb or whatever. Anyway.
Oh, that would have been one of the Oh, I actually, okay, so a little fun detail there is that if I am correct, I'm gonna look it up here.
This is
But
beautiful. I love
that
the goblins here on this sort of like this tree, this swamp area, and it's kind of like a, male, female. It's nice.
Yeah, it's comfort. It's like idealistic, and I
I
guess
love it.
I do quite like that. Um, so this actually, let me just so I'm gonna make sure that we're talking about the same piece. You said Goblin on a Throne. Are you talking about this guy right here?
Let's see. Um, yes.
So a fun fact, that is not a goblin.
Oh, interesting.
So do with that information as you will.
Oh, okay. I have it set to. I'm gonna add that later on the thing because it's I have it set to just record the Discord call.
Yeah,
But yeah,
for sure.
that's exactly what I was referring to. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I'll have to think about that.
Yeah, that one's fun.
Yeah, I just get carried away. That's my favorite section, by the way, on the website is the concept art. I love it. Yeah,
I think
it's amazing.
it's never up to date. It's there's always more that I tend to. It's up to date for about 1 second, and then I make something new and don't put it up there. But
So, and this is a stupid question. I'm sorry. It's kind of ignorant of me. I know I think there's like what like 20 something people on the team now. But are you the one? Have you responsible for the entirety of the concept art in Monsters and
right
Memories?
now, yes. So
Okay.
for the
Wow.
concept art, it is me. I do a lot of the concept art and the illustration, so the marketing type stuff art that you see. So that's why we broke it up into concept art and illustrations. One is for like,
Huh.
hey, this is gonna hit, this is the 3P, like put a lot of render into it, that sort of thing. And the others are just ideas, right? It's what could be, and gets people excited, about like different mobs or different possible playable races in the future, that sort of thing.
Okay. Gotcha.
There was I do have to point out that there are some amazing pieces that or concepts that wasn't done by me. So I can't take credit for all of it. And they're environmental pieces that were done by one of our team members that no longer is on the team. But for the most part, I would say yes. And that artist's name is Neil, and he's fantastic, and you'll recognize it right away, because it's not quite my style, and I can point those out to you after as well.
Okay.
Just want to give a lot of good credit to him because just fantastic work.
Absolutely. And so, okay, for goblins specifically, so how did you get into goblins? Why goblins? I find that very interesting.
Some there's 1,000 reasons that, and I always like pick one or two to share, and they're always different. Like how Joker's like always gives that different answer for how he got those scars. I feel like the same thing happens with goblins here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like green a lot, and like I also like drawing monsters and anatomy and stuff like that a lot. So like creatures and characters, and so like both of those just fit really well, and so I absolutely love and I also, I'm a little bit mischievous, like my birthday is April 1st, so I'm kind of a little bit of a fool slash jokester, prankster, as it were, and then as well, there was a time where I was doing like these little goblin comics almost as like a protest in university, because some people said that goblins and fantasy art aren't real art, and I was like, I don't think that is true. And so, I just like based, almost my entire personality off of it for a while. And there's also something quite freeing about being a goblin that doesn't kind of like retain to like these pressures. Like, like a goblin doesn't care if he's naked and you are. It's like why you know
Yeah.
he doesn't care if he's acting, and so it's like being connected to yourself more than letting people tell you how to do things, I guess. And I definitely am quite stubborn, so that makes a whole lot of sense for me.
I love that. And you know what, actually, just as we're talking, it's one of the things, if you think about it, and I'm not like a connoisseur of all MMOs, but in general, I just feel like goblins as a race in sort of fantasy games hasn't been explored to the same level as like other sort of quote unquote evil races. You have like orcs, trolls, froglocks, or kind of like lizard men.
Yeah.
But goblins in general, it's kind of interesting because then there's different, like, there's ice goblins, there's like fire goblins.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot that can be done with it. So I find that interesting.
Yeah, they have a lot of they're one of the creatures that can have like immense personality or be completely monstrous, and both fit perfectly within the confines of the idea of goblin. And I guess I really like that, the amount of play that they have. Yeah.
Yeah. And even too, for me, like in the context of Monsters and Memories, I usually play a human. I just think it's a really, I don't know, proportionally, I think it's just right for me. But I've been really getting into the goblins and Monsters and Memories. I've been rolling a lot of alts and stuff to play around with. I think it's really, really interesting from that standpoint. So yeah, so in your head, what makes a goblin feel right as opposed to just like a little green guy? You touched on there's room for kind of chaos, but also, kind of intelligence there too. They're varied. It's not just like, okay, well, this is a goblin. It's kind of like humans. We're all different. Do you have any thoughts
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. The thing about goblins is that like they require like a world context for them to exist in and be in. Like they are a litmus test to what kind of fantasy world you're in. So like if you have some serious comedic or yeah, if you have some serious monstrous goblins, like then you can go, okay, this is like a really dark fantasy. But then at the same time, you can have like this over the top like grot type thing from Warhammer, and yeah, they're brutal, but they're also like brutal in this like vicious, funny way. Not quite as funny as just the orcs, because they end up being a little bit more of a comedic relief than anything. But like, and then the same thing with like, you look at Harry Potter goblins, or you look at like World of Warcraft goblins, like they're tinkerers, and so you can kind of get like an idea of the world just from the kind of goblins that exist in them. And I'm like that's sweet. And so when you're designing a goblin, you're almost like trying to fit them into the piece of a world that already exists. Or in my case, like when I'll design one, I'll be like, okay, like what would that say about the world around them? Because I do a lot of goblins, and so it's a lot of fun that way. So I would say like the world around them is like super super important. For me, fantasy, it has to be a fantasy world. I don't like it when goblins tend to tech up too much, and or they have like top hats or something, or they're like mob bosses. So the World of Warcraft goblins, like they miss it for me. Having a Boston accent just like kind of throws me off. I'm like, that's way too modern. Like that's not in a fantasy game. But like goblins that kind of rip people off, pull pranks, steal, like
Yeah.
male goblins can't have hair for some reason. I've just decided that like it doesn't make sense for me. It makes them feel too modern and like more like a scumbag than like a monster. And so they definitely have to have like, the classic things like a pointy nose, sharp teeth, to make him feel like a monster and all that. So that's the classic stuff that they have to be for sure. For me to say, hey, that's a really good goblin. So yeah, context of the world, so things for them to do it in, and then yeah, just being a little bit monstrous, and you can have a lot of play with that, with how comedy or comedic the world is, or serious the world is, etc.
That's beautiful, and I totally agree. Yeah, sort of more modern takes or kind of different spins on it. It really takes me out of it as well.
Yeah, you want them to be like a little greedy tribe or something, and they can. There's like levels of that, depending on their intelligence or their AC, but yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. And so now for your core philosophy on the website, I found a really poignant quote. You said that you believe that generic becomes iconic when done with care, labor, and truth. And I love that so much. I think that's really profound. Do you have an example of that in practice?
Yeah, we can look at some of the most iconic kind of literature there is for fantasy. You look at Lord of the Rings. Like, frankly, Lord of the Rings is a quite generic setting. However, Tolkien put an immense amount of care into it. Like, so much so that you go, this is believable. This is something I haven't seen before. And you take that and you kind of like see how others have done, Lord of the Rings adaptations. So you look at Peter Jackson's Lord of the Ring trilogy, you look at the behind the scenes on that, it's just like you can tell everybody A, loves Lord of the Rings, and then B, wants to make this the best damn thing that they've ever made. And so they're taking this thing, and it's like ultimately like what Aragorn looks like is, or he's just a strider, right? He's wearing a cloak, whatever. Like, you could pass it, but then the amount that the costume like made sense, and stuff that you don't even see on screen that all went into it, and the mud and the grime, and to make it wear, and like
Yeah.
all these like little details, like that's put into it, and that's that care, and that's that labor that makes it more iconic than anything. So I would say Lord of the Rings is a great example. There's a couple more that I would say like that hit that for me. I mean, like Halo. Like, I grew up as an Xbox kid. Halo is a generic game. It's a generic fantasy game. However, like everybody on that team cared, and you can tell, and they were there, and after hours putting the work in, and making sure that the music was right, and making sure Master Chief sounded right, and that the enemies, reacted right, and like all that stuff is there. And I could think of a lot of those like those early Xbox games, and like, I mean, like even World of Warcraft, just fantastic. Like, you can tell those guys cared.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I see that now in a lot of modern stuff. Like, it certainly has the look, but not the feel, for sure. And I guess that's kind of a good segue to the next question. But to you, what is the difference between generic and timeless in fantasy design?
Personally, I would say it stems a whole lot from archetype. So if you start with an archetype and you build out from there, I feel like you're trying to get to like the essence of something first, and then you put, as you make it, you'll find and put these details into it that can transform it from, just something generic to something that has an immense amount of novelty, that has an immense amount of I guess, like story and history, reason to exist. And so like for fantasy design, you want those things. And that's where it has to start for me, is just, yeah, having these archetypes that is like, that's why our dwarves look like dwarves. Like we didn't try and do anything kind of like wacky with them. That's why our gnomes look like gnomes. That's why our goblins look like little shit-eating grin goblins. It's the the idea is not to take something and just do creative stuff for the creativity of it, but for it to fulfill a purpose within your world. And I guess that also that like, yeah, so starting with archetypes, but also like world first stuff. It has to be world first. It has to fit in that world, and make sense in that world before anything.
Okay. Yeah, beautiful. I absolutely agree. Do you have a design that you started that was kind of complicated at first and maybe you simplified it and it got stronger? Anything like that? It seems like, sometimes you could do too much. But it's, simplicity is a beautiful thing. I guess that kind of harkens back to the 3 Ps that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, for this, it's funny because I actually really, really have like been drawn to detail, and it's been like a goal of mine as I work with Monsters and Memories to become more detail oriented and to put that effort into the world and put that effort into the designs. And so like a part of me really likes like, oh yeah, like this is like detail is actually better. And there are certain things like that can reel that in, like technical limitations where we go, okay, that's just not like, that's too wild of me or whatever. But there's also, I would say, like in our armors, it comes to mind where if you go too detailed and the design becomes too like intricate and becomes mostly noise, you can get a little bit of an issue there. And so for us, when it comes to armor design, the material actually speaks a whole lot. And so if like for example, you were to look at some of our yeah, our armor designs or concepts for like for plate or for robes or for cloth, that sort of thing, like a lot of those are actually quite simple in shape. The material does a whole lot of the speaking. And in some cases, like we go to quite the extreme to make sure that is the case. We want things to be a little bit generic on that side so that when we do end up like really flaring things out and giving them a lot of like detail or a lot of color or whatever, that will stand out as a really, really like powerful piece, and so we always have to, yeah, in terms of that, like armor design, weapon design, let's not complicate things for now because we want them to be super generic, because we want people to just be getting there. We don't want people to be like flashy, at level 10. We want that. And even when it comes to class, like class armor designs, we don't want that to be flashy even at our top of the line. We just want our class to look like our class first.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love that. Yeah, it does get to a point where it gets just kind of outrageous, and that's beautiful. So, what do you think that modern fantasy art forgets the most when it tries to look cool, quote unquote?
Yeah, I would say it's subverting expectations as a pillar. Like when your goal is specifically set out to do that, I kind of feel like if you set out trying to make something that is true to yourself or true to the project, all the details that will kind of go into that will like kind of already set itself up to be somewhat different. And then also a little bit, dependent too much on like the same color theory, like an artist might put in like a little bit of blue or something, and then like they go, okay, well, let's look at the complementary color and we're going to make sure to put that in, instead of just following kind of their gut. Because when you just follow your gut and you have colors that just kind of exist rather than like were perfectly placed there by an artist, you get a lot of new novel things. Like I think about it in the way like when is it like recently that's just been like that has blown my socks off, just how the when I see like color novelty, and it's hard to come across that, I feel like a lot of times more recently in gaming. But it's not to diss anybody, it's just not my approach. Like for example, I would like to see like a deep sea painting, where it's almost just blue, and then like, or it is just blue, it's just a nice gradient of blue, and you see like a small shadow or of something, that's like a shark, and you go, oh wow, that's striking. Because like, and when's the last time that we just saw that without someone going in like, let's put a little bit of orange in there to grab your attention and make sure that your eye is fed into it. It's like there's a lot of rules that I think that a lot of people follow, especially when it comes to color, that that kind of like make me go, I wouldn't choose that, because it's not following, like necessarily what I feel. And yeah, I guess lack of following intuition sometimes too. But anyway, that's what I end up sort of like coming back to.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense, especially with that example. Yeah. So for your inspiration, where do your best ideas come from? Is it books, games, nature, dreams, history, music, or other video games, or what's that like for you?
Yeah, so definitely from dreams, definitely from like ruminating just on an idea for a while. A lot of it is starting off on my own. There's a great Paul Bonner article that talks about that. Not necessarily using reference. Like almost reference can be like debilitating a little bit. And so yeah, starting off on your own, and I'm made of like the stuff that came before me, just in terms of like what I took in, and so like the books and games and all that stuff's like, I think of Wizard of Earthsea, I think of like Fable or Halo or Gears of War, or like all these awesome things of these artists that like really followed their intuition, I feel like. And I like that stuff. I like that stuff a lot.
Beautiful. So you mentioned the Wizard of Earthsea as one of your favorites. What does that book do that artists can learn from? I'm actually not familiar with it. I looked into it a little bit before our talk, and it seems like something I would really enjoy. I was curious what your thoughts were there.
Yeah. It's attentiveness to truth, like down to every sentence. Like when you read it, it's like every sentence was meticulously placed there to like be there, or like not lie. And that it's so, I haven't seen, or I haven't read a book that is that striking to me, like that stuck out as much. And so that's what I would say. Yeah.
It's interesting, especially since like how goblins are, and how being mischievous and kind of chaotic, and then having something like it's very interesting. Do you have a small detail that you obsess over that most people would never notice, but like it really matters to you? I guess like from an artist's perspective,
Yeah, I would like to say
if you
that
feel like sharing, it's
that a lot of the details that just sort of add up. And so like you might not, you go, oh, okay, well he's painting grass or foliage, but like there's so much like that goes into making sure that what greens you're using, they're being justified by the other greens that you're using. And so there's like this build up that you can go, okay, well this looks right, and then like ultimately like all those little details eventually land in like a field of grass. And like to some people it's just a field of grass, but man is it like it's nice to have good foliage. I love painting foliage so much.
wow, interesting. Um, so okay, so now this kind of explores your creative process a little bit. So whenever you get a new concept, what did you have like a first move? Do you kind of focus on some words or thumbnails like silhouettes or the mood or the palette? Like sort of how do you get started whenever you're basically like exploring a new concept?
For environment, it is color. I always start with color. Because I think color's the strongest when it comes to telling an emotion or mood. And then shape tends to interact with color, uh, or and it has the opportunity to like subvert it or to lean into it. You know, you can think of like an example where you go, okay, here's a pink painting, and then you have a soft gradient or something. But then as soon as you start to add in like these really spiky spikes, you go, that's not what I think of when I think of pink. And so now you've subverted, and that's why you get a lot of that sort of pop punk stuff happening. Where you get sharp angles and those and big blocky stuff in punk art and stuff like that, and then or pop punk art. And then you have, for characters, I would say I always start with line. I usually start with the personality. And so when I start with the personality, that means usually the face first. And then I draw out. There's a lot of ideas about, starting with silhouette and making sure that your character reads. And while that's important, I would say that silhouette tends to design itself. Where, and if it's really important, like usually it's important in like a shooter game like TF2 or Doom or Quake or something like that, where, oh, okay, I really need to, like, these fast judgments of what's happening. If a heavy comes around the corner, that's a heavy, and need to make a decision right now, based off of that being like a heavy. And so Monsters Memories is a whole lot less like that. We're not, I mean, there are some big decision makers, but silhouette isn't really necessarily something that I go, oh yeah, like I need to make sure that this hits, because I tend to think that it tends to design itself a little bit. And then with the silhouette, or sorry, not with the silhouette, with the designing from the face out, you get the personality, and then you can draw more based off of that decision. And then you can draw more based off of that decision that was strong because it was the best decision for the face that you just drew. And so you're always making the best decision possible, or the most informed decision possible, as you're drawing out this character. And so that's how I tend to do it. Is, yeah, it's a little bit like in and out, into out, rather than a lot of like the silhouette type designs that you get. It kind of reminds me of like drawing in a sketchbook as a kid, like, and there's something nice to that, of like freeing to that, to just being like, yeah, I'm just drawing like I did in high school. Like, that's kind of cool. kind of neat.
I love that. I love that. That's, yeah, I could definitely relate. And so just going off of that, so what are you solving first? Readability, story, faction identity, gameplay clarity, or vibe? It's kind of interesting. It reminds me too, it's like, those things that you see in like sculpture classes where it's like the person is sort of carving themselves out. Do you, it's, you kind of visualize the finished thing, but then how do you get there? And yeah, so what are you solving first?
Yes, sometimes there's a like a vision that you go, oh, I have to, like once I've ruminated on something for a while, I go, or I had like a dream and I go, oh, that would be really cool. Like I just had this one recently about like almost like a construct insectoid type thing, and it's stuck in my brain, and I need to get it out at some point here soon.
Oh, that's cool.
But there's this I would say once you get the personality right, which is the face, and you're starting to draw out, or it doesn't have to be the face, it could be like what is the most like striking part or like important part of the character. Usually it's the head, or usually it's the eyes or something like that. But once you get that kind of like struck out, then you're adding in, as you draw out, you're adding in the story. You're adding in making sure that the silhouette does fit, right? Like our ogres are very different from our goblins, right? And that's just going to happen. But if you look at the difference between like male goblins and like female goblins, the male goblin I wanted to be kind of more like a club, while the female goblin I wanted to feel more like a knife. And so you can help, those sort of decisions help as you're like, or sorry, those sort of like linings help as you like design it out or draw it out. And then as well, like lots of iteration with like the team and all that stuff. So yeah, I would. Sorry, I forgot the question.
No, that's it. That's beautiful. And so, speaking of iteration, what does that loop kind of look like for you? How many? Well, I know it varies, obviously, but how many passes before something kind of clicks?
It can differ. Sometimes, like I try and hit it first time, every time, which is not always going to happen, right? And so like I'll do a illustration, and I'll follow that. Say it's like a web or like a circle, right? And you're starting out in the center, and every decision that you make pushes out towards the edge, and that edge is its endpoint, and that edge is something that will go in a different direction. And so you'll make a decision, and you'll have this squiggly line that hits out to the edge, and that's your design now. And you can branch out from any point of that, but what I tend to do is if it didn't hit the mark, I'll start from the center again. And then I'll go out in a completely different direction, because every decision is now being informed by what I started out with. And so what you end up with is like a wide net of decisions and concepts, depending on whether or not we hit it. So like, we can look at like the kobold designs that I did. There was one where I had like a rat kobold, and then eventually, I branched off with that same thing, and I made like a little crocodile kobold. And then eventually it was like, okay, let's start again. And I start from the center, and, I did like this kind of more D&D like kobold from the classic, where he's more like, with fur and horns and all that stuff. And then I did a scale one where, okay, this is a completely different direction, where he's more like a little dragonkin type kobold, or like a lizard. And then finally, based off of all of those decisions, there was a route to the edge of like this one that I really, really liked, where it was like, okay, let's take pieces from this. And that was probably the most iterative concept that I've done. In that way, where you go, okay, let's just have a completely new take on it and try and hit it, and I'd say that web or that net wasn't as wide as some of them can be, because I can just go in completely different directions sometimes. But I find it really, really useful, because each one of those designs is like strong on their own, and we could revisit or use later down the line, because they're designed from that ground up sort of idea. And in terms of iteration, there are times where it's just very simply like, okay, that's not working. Make them thicker, or make them more chonky, or make them like, oh, I wasn't thinking that. Like, let's go. What if we just change this one thing, and then that can do it. And or what ends up happening is I go, okay, you guys aren't happy with it. Let's like put even more detail into it. So I'm selling the character almost, I'm putting a little bit more lavish on it or something. So that tends to be how I kind of manage it.
Interesting. And so how do you know when a design is done? Do you have like a stopping rule? Do you ever sometimes for me, like I have to like walk away when I'm editing something, or kind of come back, just think about it. And how do you know when a design is done?
It's going to sound kind of cheesy, but when it is what it is, when it's doing its job, when it's like, you're like, yep, that's it. That's that's a kobold. Like, I thought I was done for the kobold like 4 times. I was like, fucking nailed it every time. But ultimately it wasn't the case. So ultimately it is when the team says it's done. When the team is happy with it, it's like, okay, I know that my biases have been checked against other people's biases, and we've explored all the options and all that stuff. Ends up being usually a combination of taste or alignment, and so it's definitely like a team decision. Like, there's very few things where people are like, I'm not feeling this, and I go, well, this is what you're getting. It's usually, I'm not feeling this, and I go, okay, this can be better somehow, some way. What is it? What is missing? How can I sell it more, or what other direction could I take it in?
Yeah. Beautiful. Do you what's the most common mistake people make when they start doing concept art, and how do you fix it?
This is a little bit more like high, I don't know, maybe a little bit goofy of an answer, but I just feel so strongly that when people forget to be themselves, it's just, you can tell a mile away that they're trying to placate to something or someone, that they're making decisions based off of what someone else might think is right, or based off of fear, or whatever, or based off of what they think the cool thing is, or what someone else would think is cool. So,
yeah.
But if you forget to be yourself, it's like, well, like I'm never going to be Frank Frazetta. Like, I can't, even if I tried, and even then I would just be like a fraud Frank Frazetta. So I have to be me, and I see that in a lot of I see that kind of approach in a lot of games with an amazing visual identity, like Shadows of the Colossus, Shunpei Suzuki. He has amazing work, and they're all like they're just drawn up, because he was like, this is cool, and I'm being myself. Like Paul Bonner, same thing. Yoshitaka Amano, same thing. Brian Froud, all great artists, that follow what they did, and you can see it. I mean, like the Dark Crystal, amazing, right? Yeah. And then I also think of things like the Halo, the original Halo concepts. They're just like line art, but they had so much personality and identity that it ends up making these iconic characters, like Marcus Leto and Shikai Wang, if I'm pronouncing that right. Like they did awesome stuff. And then I guess the final thing is like, or the final artist that I'd like to like mention is like Chris Perna from Gears of War. He had this amazing interview for Gears of War 3, and it stuck with me. Like back then, I showed my parents, when I was a teenager. I was like, look, see, he's drawing monsters for a living, and that's like, and he's like this guy that just like, like has his own little monster cave, and that's what he's doing, and like he's doing something that, and I just thought that was like amazing at the time, and I followed that same sort of thread of being yourself. I wish I followed that a little bit sooner, but yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Wow. So getting into Monsters and Memories a little bit, as far as art direction and rules go, what are some sort of non-negotiables of the Monsters and Memories visual identity? Is there stuff that you kind of protect at all costs? It seems like you mentioned like everything does seem kind of grounded in the world. That seems to be a hard rule for you.
Yeah. It's charm. Everything has to have charm. Whether that's in the silhouette or the textures or whatever design. Attention to detail. We have to have that attention to detail. We can't miss it. So it has to have like a level of fidelity that we're all happy with, and then ultimately there's like this gut check of if it fits in the world or not. And there are certain concepts that I've made that are just like, well, we might not put that in. Well, they might have a certain specific place within the world. Like there's this concept called the Hamlin that I made once upon a time, and it's essentially just this giant goblin head with arms and legs, and it's so dumb, and I love it so much. But will it make it in? We'll see. It has to fit. And there has to be a reason for it.
Is it like a structure, or is it like a physical creature of sorts?
Yeah, it's a physical creature, and it's just a goblin head with hands and legs.
Oh, very cool, very cool. Yeah. Maybe like a crazy boss down in the deep or something one day. Whenever you're designing for an old school MMO vibe, what are the visual traps that you avoid so it doesn't become a parody? You did touch on a lot of this before, but does anything come to mind there?
Yeah, we just need to make sure that once it's in game, we refine that shape and proportion as we see it measured up against the rest of the game. So like the ogre, if you look at really early versions of him, he was like 1/3 more wide, and he had like less leg, which is like, okay, he already has like not a lot of leg, so let's adjust the proportion now that we see him in game. And then the same thing with like the male wood elf has gone through a couple sessions of bulking up, and so we just need to make sure and like put things into the right proportions and perspective as we get them in game. That would be like the biggest thing for me is because otherwise we end up looking a little too jank or a little too cartoony. It just we have to dial it in to make it just right.
I love it. Yeah, everything is working amazingly so far from my perspective. How do you balance nostalgic with fresh so it still feels like home, but it still surprises you? That's one of the things that I personally love about Monsters and Memories, is that it is like, it looks old, not like old, janky old, but it is kind of, it really captures that vibe, that nostalgia, but it's also something new at the same time. It's really, really interesting. How do you balance that?
Yeah, that's the sort of thing that kind of happens naturally, I would say. Like because we're designing for our world and those things are exclusive to our world and we start off with like archetypes, like those things just naturally sort of happen as, you know, like one of us gets a cool idea for lore, or like the quest guys go in and they're like, oh, this would be really cool. You know, like a lot of that detail and a lot of that it just sort of like ends up as you put the time and effort into it, and it's getting through all these eyes because there's a big team now. Um, like yeah, it just kind of ends up, I would say, in a place that could only be us, and has that novelty to it. We also, when I'm balancing designs, I try and make sure that archetypes don't overlap too much. So like a good example is like deep gnomes and goblins are kind of close, but they're not that close. And then like our dwarves, when the idea was to make like a deep dwarf, we needed to make sure that, okay, are we just going to do evil dwarves, or is there like another archetype that we could like set a little bit further away? And so we ended up with like these golem undead types because we didn't have undead really covered when it came to our race design, you know, in terms of that giant archetypal spread. So yeah, making sure that things don't overlap too much. Like ideally, you know, any big dumb gross monster that we do next isn't going to be like essentially just another ogre. We want to have that variety in it, and that should give the world a little bit more depth as well.
Beautiful. Um, so you covered this already. I just feel like, but just in case. So in an MMO, you know, the art isn't just something there to look pretty. It's communication. And so, what are you trying to communicate instantly with silhouettes and shapes from an
Yeah,
artist's point of view?
for us, like that's our silhouettes are race first, right? And then it's class, and beyond that, you can get into like you know, like how good of character they are, how what their level is or whatever. And so with silhouettes and shapes and stuff like that, you want those races, that personality to like hit the strongest. And so our ogres are, they're big and dumb and round, and our goblins are small and sharp, you know, and you have those different like shapes that just represent those personalities, and those kind of come out naturally a little bit. But you have to make sure to like, yeah, have those different shapes for sure.
Beautiful. And so, last question in this category: what does Monsters and Memories need to look like for the world to feel dangerous but inviting at the same time?
Definitely needs novelty. So you need POIs that hook you. So POI is a point of interest. Tend I tend to like lean on like some sort of darkness to challenge you. So that's like you get that as the night kind of goes around, and dungeons are definitely dark, and ultimately cohesion with the history of the world. That last one is like paramount, because like there's this moment that happened on stream, on Sean's stream, that the the chat just kind of blew up for, and I was like, whoa, I kind of didn't expect that, but it was so telling. But I put these little decals into the brick of the Night Harbor, the Night Harbor, like, what's it called? Yeah, ground brick, right? And so it's all that tiling that you have, but in it there's these little Night Harbor like stamps or little etchings,
Okay.
and people are like they're like, whoa, you know, like this brick is like Night Harbor like branded, and you can start to see some of the shapes and that they put onto it, and like that's cool to me. So it's definitely makes it, gives it like this realness to it, but it also invites, because you're invited to see these extra details.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I'm catching up on some of the VODs. I wasn't aware of that. I'll have to kind of do some exploring and kind of look around and
Yeah.
enjoy that. So now this is interesting. So this is sort of my world building through art section, which I feel like you really capture this. So even though without writing a single sentence, basically the art it makes the world feel lore rich, like very visually, and so it's very interesting how you kind of encapsulate that. So this is just kind of like a multi-layered question, but so how do you make cultures feel distinct using only like kind of shapes, materials, patterns? That's something that's striking to me in the world of Monsters and Memories. You have so many diverse races and cultures and kind of regions of the world. So how do you make all that feel distinct?
I would say that a lot of that will end up being distinct just by being what's it called, like by being a different biome. Like when people went from the desert out to the forest, they're like, oh, what a breath of fresh air. But beyond that, like when I design something, I tend to try and design it as if it was designed by characters or NPCs or inhabitants of the world, and what would make sense to them. And I mix that a little bit with intuition. So there's like a little bit of meta play at there where you go like, what would this person do? And or like, what was this designed by? And so you always keep that in mind. Like, oh, like these higher ups made this design decision, but they made it 300 years ago. What were they thinking? And so you can kind of like go, okay, let's make a decision based off of what they would have thought. Or what they would have done, and then how would have the world then affected that. So there's like multiple layers to it that can be pretty heavy. But then the other side is also like just intuition in terms of what feels right. Like I'm gonna add spikes to things that that are a little bit evil, or like changing up. There was this one point with orcs where I was designing out the bunker, and the team wasn't quite happy with it because it was like too chunky or whatever. But then I adjusted just the material. I went from like stone to like a metal, and then immediately it clicked for everybody. They were like, oh, that's really cool. And so I started to lean into that a little bit more. The design ended up changing quite a bit, but the structure was still pretty much there. But a lot of that had to do with what would they use? Yeah.
I love that. And so yeah, this kind of leads me to the next thing. So how important is sort of a history in the object, like sort of dense repairs, sort of hand me down or kind of worn out gear, improvisation. The world just feels very lived in. And so yeah, you did say you try to think about, you try to place yourself in the people that kind of live in that region, but how important is that for you? And also too, just this is all kind of like multifaceted here, but do you have sort of an approach to kind of environmental storytelling? Like, okay, so even if you're in this place, but you don't exactly know what the quest is, there's, yeah, how do you see all that?
Yeah. I would say that when it comes to that sort of process, it's like the team tends to like pick up a lot on that as it goes through all the hands. And so like like for example, there was this one design that I made, and like uh Chinny was like, hey, how would this work? Like what materials it actually like made out of. And so like and so it's okay, well, he's double checking, triple checking that things are like, in line. It's not just one person says this thing and then it goes ahead. It's like it goes through all these different hands, and a lot of the content as well will lean into that too. But in terms of like environment storytelling, like I'm actually not an environment artist. Like I could do concept art and everything, and I can put as much detail and like little bits of story as I can. But most of my environment art experience actually comes from working on Witherhome. So like what I tend to do for level design there is like I think about what events have happened and how there's like a history to, let's say, like any given room or a purpose to that room. Like especially only when resources allow, because that's having every single little bit, figured out, and then like justified, through like game design, where you're like, okay, well, we needed a hall here and we need this extra room here because there's like a mob area that we want people to have. It's like okay, sometimes it's just working in tandem with that, to work with game design as well. But yeah, and it usually also invokes like a feeling, like for Witherhome again, we have downward spirals where like where we go like, okay, you're heading downwards into this dark corridor and it keeps going down and then it's branching and now there's indecision, and it keeps spiraling down and keeps spiraling down, and you go, oh, how long is it? And then you just start to feel this dread, and then you can add in like little sounds here and there to tip people off or make them on edge or whatever. So that's my experience with level design and environment design. Otherwise, it's mostly on the rest of the team. They're doing a fantastic job, in my opinion, because they put that work in and they have that approach of like, oh, why would this exist? And like, what story can we tell here? And especially with our mud system, right? So there's lots of cool stuff that we are able to do in Monsters and Memories that otherwise would just be, kind of lost, because we have that mud system as well.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. And that's something that's kind of grown on me. I will admit, I'm not, it took me a little while to get used to, but it's a really beautiful way to interact with the world. It's really starting to grow on me. It's beautiful. Okay, so this here is this is kind of fun, slightly optional section. So feel free to kind of gloss over some of this here. But so sure. I find this very interesting. So you've said working with you is a conversation. So what does great feedback from a dev team kind of look like?
Just honest observations and being clear about what your wishes are, like, and you can also acknowledge like I like to know like where you're coming from. So if you have like a bias, or like, I like this, not this, then that really goes like an amazingly far way with me. Just so I know what direction I can head into, and try and do my own take on what we want or what is wanted. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And then, so on the inverse of that, what does kind of bad feed look like, and how do you translate it into something usable?
Yeah, I would say the unsaid things. So like it's almost the same answer, right? It's if you don't give honest observations and wishes, that can really like muddy the waters, and so I tend to just clarify, with a lot of questions and clarify intent, and then we can set off on the same page. And that's probably the best thing. It's just You don't want those unsaid things. You just want people to be, okay, this is what we're after. Let's try and get there.
Absolutely. And yeah, even in my line of work, you have to ask a lot of questions up front sometimes. I myself need to get a little bit better about this. And so just kind of hypothetically here too, totally optional, but like if there are instances where and the team kind of disagree, how do you kind of resolve it? You know, is it taste, constraints, vision, kind of gameplay needs, anything there?
Having this, like, these team disagreements, I would say put in the work. So like if there's a direction that someone wants to go with something, instead of, and you know, I mentioned this before, but instead of just like pushing through and saying like, no, this is the way, right? What I'll usually do is I'll go, okay, let's take a stab at what you were thinking, and then I'll take a stab at what I was thinking, and then I'll put them both up and say, okay, here's these two directions. And that way, I feel like I'm a little bit happy with both ways that are being like, you know, because I have my approach to them. Yeah, I would say there's also like, yeah, you have to put the work in, and then you also have, like, we also do have like this understanding of like different tastes, and that will just happen. And if the team clashes too much on one thing, it's going to be like, okay, let's go see what the big three like, right? And so we then pull in someone like Sean or Ollie to like make a final decision on some of these things. And ultimately, everybody on the team just respects that. And so there's no like, okay, well, at least for my side, you know, that's just sort of how it is. And it's probably also the best, you know, because this isn't like my game. It's our game. It's everybody's game. And ultimately, all the designs that we've ended up like clashing over, you know, because there's a lot of that, because we're all very passionate. It's like we always end up with the best design. A design that was way better than whatever we came up with or whatever I came up with by myself. You know, whether it's the amount of depth or checking my biases that the team does, like I try and be as fair to their opinions as well as I can.
Beautiful. You know,
and I guess also I will say I'm not perfect, so sometimes I do go like, no, I really like this. I want this in, and you know,
yeah.
So I'm not perfect, for sure.
No, I understand. It's beautiful. You know, you just reminded me to circle back. You mentioned like kind of technical limitations. You know, wouldn't it be cool if these eyeballs could kind of move and look at you? You know, it reminds me too, just when I think back, like from my childhood and just kind of early years playing games. You know, like a lot of the great games that really kind of stuck with me and kind of resonated with me were games where like it was a small team. They didn't have the funding or the hardware, but it was just like these ambitious, beautiful, creative ideas that, you know, like for example, like the fog in Silent Hill. That was because like the hardware couldn't render like a full town, so they had to mask it with the fog. That's like a really famous case, or you know, kind of like early kind of Final Fantasy and stuff like that. I think that's really interesting. And just a real quick fun fact about me. So I studied art history, and I remember my professor mentioned that like great art has to stand up on its own and kind of be impactful. You know, the artist can't always be there right next to the artwork to kind of explain it to you, to kind of defend his case or whatever. So great art has to stand up on its own, and I feel like that's very effective in the art. Just kind of throwing that out there. So that was a beautiful answer. Thank you so much. And then just to kind of continue here, what's the best kind of constraint for creativity? What kind of constraint kills it from your perspective as an artist?
Yeah, I would say lore constraints rock. They're sweet. It means, okay, this can't happen, so why? And so you get into it. And then I would also say that technical constraints, yeah, they suck. And similar to what I said before, it's like, yeah, technical constraints, they're not great. They can sometimes land us in like a really good place, but otherwise it just like um otherwise it just kind of gets in the way of things that we would really like to do, you know. I think of like the way that the character creator has, or our armor system, right? Like we can't, or maybe it's technical constraints, but it's also like work power constraints. Like, oh man, we could do this if we had enough people thrown at it, you know, or we had enough like workforce, you know, but we just don't. And so we have to sort of work around that, or say, okay, this is as good as it's going to get. Or, you know, like I would say that's probably the biggest like thing that just sucks for creativity.
I gotcha. Um, so this is another kind of optional nerd section here, but so what role does sort of traditional mediums play in your thinking, even when the final output is kind of digital?
Traditional stuff is a lot of planning for me. So like level design, or like trying to put together like a little puzzle, um you know, that sort of thing. Like at one point I did go to my sketchbook to design out the original lineup for our races, but since then I've just moved on to digital. I don't think there might have been something special about that, like the little sketchiness, so you know, just to get like a good idea down. um you know, that I could see that for sure. But in general, yeah, I just mostly use traditional stuff for like planning things out or getting my thoughts out, writing things down, almost like a journal, you know, in terms of like, oh, would this work? No. You know, when I need to like get something organized in my head, where it's like, okay, these archetypes are all covered, what archetype do I need, you know, left to touch up, or making sure things don't overlap, I'll draw it out, and make sure that, okay, well, you know, like this guy's kind of covered, little sneaky little goblins covered. Okay, what would work with that or under it or whatever. Um, yeah, so that's what I would say. Not a whole lot, but definitely more of a journal thing for me.
Okay, beautiful. And do you think that learning a bit of 3D changes a kind of 2D artist's brain? Is there anything there kind of going from 3D to 2D, believability, lighting, composition? Just
I
curious.
use it for perspective a lot. And so like if there, I think I can do perspective decently well, but when there's something that's like really challenging in terms of like how the area would like fit, there's no harm in throwing your, you know, a little quick like mock up of like gray boxing, and then throwing that into the painting, and then using that as a base, um, or a guideline or something. Uh, it's also it's also nice to know about the technical limitations that you have when designing something. So there are some times where I'll come up with something and it's just like, that's not going to work. You know, like just because the way that 3D works, you know, like, and I'm drawing 2D like from one side or another, and there's just like some confusion, or like, oh, this actually won't connect here. And so knowing a little bit of 3D helps with that as well, especially within our armor system. You know, what we can and cannot do. There's like some limitations there. You know, like recently we're like trying to balance how far the well, it was just a conversation, so nothing's being worked on, but we were trying to balance how far like the troll belly might be able to flop down, you know. And will we be able to? Will we have to pull back on it? And like there's certain things like that, just technically, that you need to be aware of when designing. That, you know, in some cases, with the belly part, we don't have an answer, and so in the future it'll be like, okay, well, we can't do overhanging bellies. You know, it's just as simple as that.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, whenever you're stuck, what gets you unstuck? Do you kind of, you know, go for a walk, switch tools, go traditional, or redraw things from scratch? You kind of sort of what's it called, like an artist block? Or...
Yeah, redraw is huge. Start fresh from something or do something else. Switch tasks. If you're stuck, switching tasks helps a lot because there's a lot of tasks to do. Then you either recover, just say, okay, I'm done for today. I'm tapped. I can't figure it out. Or if you're starting out and it's just not a good day, you gotta listen to that. You can't just be like, can't just force it through every single time. And then I guess the final will be to just ruminate, because if you're thinking about something, eventually something's gonna click. You know, especially late at night when all those chemicals in your head are like flying and you're like, okay, well, and they're making connections that you honestly couldn't make early in the morning. You know, it's like, okay, this is good. I think that's why I work so late at night. It's because my day's there, and then all the good stuff comes out at night, and I go, okay, that's like my brain's just making connections that was so hard in the morning. I don't understand why that, you know. So
that's very interesting. I feel like, me personally, my best ideas come in the morning, and then as the day goes on, I get like more and more kind of tired. But that is interesting. Okay, very cool. Do you sorry, this is all kind of jumbled. I think but anyway, do you have a skill? So, like, you know, if there's an aspiring kind of concept artist, is there a skill that you'd kind of really force them to kind of practice or iterate on? Just something really good to grind for an artist, I suppose. What's something very important?
I would say for a concept artist specifically, it's imaginative drawing. You have to get really good at that. So that means drawing, like I have a way of doing it. And I was going to go down the route of an art teacher at some point, but I never ended up doing that. But I came up with my own little like way of doing it that I would then teach people. But it's, you start with reference. So you draw from reference a lot. And usually how I would do it is you get a sketchbook, you draw from life. So that means people on the bus, people, you know, like at the mall eating or whatever, like you draw people from life with a pen, not a pencil. So that means that you're making a decision based off of proportion, and you're working on proportion and all that stuff. Then in the same session of reference, so you're drawing what is there, you switch the page and you draw what you just drew from memory without looking up. And that's going to ask you and your brain to like try and draw this thing and recall and sync that into your memory. And so there's reference, memory, and then there's a third aspect that is like the most important, which is imagination. And so now you take the pose or the anatomy that you just learned or whatever it was that you just drew, and you draw it from a different perspective, or you draw it as a different body type or in a different pose. You change one of those up, but it's the same sort of subject. And so you're taking what you learned and then you're trying to like imagine what could be on this other side of things. And you do that back to back usually. So if you do it like a reference, you'll do that reference. You'll go, okay, what things do I like about this? What did I not like? You choose like one thing or two things per drawing, and you go, I'm not going to make that mistake again. And then you do it from memory, and then you go, okay, same thing. What do I do? What do I not do? And then do it from imagination. And then what did I like? What did I not like? And you repeat that process ad nauseum. I did that for like 3 or 4 years in university. It was like I looked down in my sketchbook, and then I looked up, and like 3 or 4 years had passed. It was like, whoa.
Wow.
Like it was intense, but it was some of the best learning that I could have possibly done. Imaginative drawing is just needed. It's going to make you as a concept artist just like you're going to be able to do what you want to do instead of like be like challenged to like draw a hand or something. If you know how to draw a hand, and then you're good to go. Then you can start playing with it and doing different types of hands, gnarled hands, big buckled hands, like all that sort of stuff.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay. Just to kind of circle back on goblins and kind of creature design a little bit, and then we'll sort of wrap up. So you're lighthearted and mischievous, and that does show up in your designs. But how do you, I guess, how does that show up in your designs, even in a subtle way? I do like the image that you shared with me, this kind of like almost like an intimate image with the two goblins in the swamp. That just really comes to mind. But I guess what is that like for you?
Yeah, I would say it's like how would I want to put this? It's like a lot of the art can come across like that way, but it really does like have to be subservient to what it is supposed to be. So like if I'm drawing an elf, I hope that there's not a whole lot of goblin in there. There's going to be in just the way that I like my shapes and I like my colors and all that stuff, which tends to be like more comfortable. So how it actually bleeds in, maybe there's less purple in most drawings sound like purple that much. But in general, I would say hopefully, depending on the type of art, that it doesn't show through that much. But when it can and when it should, like Deep Gnomes, like I think there's a little bit of goblin in there, little frantic little guys. Yeah, so hopefully not too much when there's not supposed to be. Hopefully a lot when there is supposed to be.
I love it. And just a couple more questions here regarding creatures. But what makes a creature design feel believable and not just kind of like a dude in a costume? I know we covered a lot of this. I apologize. I thought I'd organize this for flow a little bit better.
No, all good. And there's some stuff that I still want to say about this. So like, to be fair, I actually like the creature of the Black Lagoon. Like, he's just a dude in a creature costume, but it's pretty cool. I still like it a lot. But I would say if you want it to not feel just like a dude in a costume, proportion and posture to start. Always proportion and posture. And then maybe like, giving them nice sharp teeth, I guess, if you're doing a creature.
Yeah.
All the monster type stuff.
Posture is very, that's like a common sense now that I think about it. Yeah, it really does add to it. Do you have a sort of like a personal checklist for a good goblin? Proportions, posture, eyes, culture attitude. One thing that I like, at least like as of the recording of this and the monsters and memories, like the character selection, this goblin with like that grin that's kind of like almost the entire head. It's just really kind of like pure sort of I don't know, it's like this, it evokes this like primal kind of fear in me, you know. It's like pure evil and mischief, whereas some of them are more kind of playful and yeah. So
yeah. That face was it was a topic of contention for a bit internally, because it was like, are we going that far? And it seems that people really liked the charm. So yeah, I would say for a male goblin, no hair. I can't handle hair. I don't know. It makes it too modern. I don't like that. I don't like modern accents. They need to be up to no good, in some way or manner. I don't like good guy goblins. It doesn't make any sense for, like the goblin to like be a hero in a case. Like, sure, we'll help you slay a dragon, but we're getting our loot from it, and it's like, or like there's some sort of social, like little ulterior motive for a goblin. Always got to get those. More recently, I tend to like claws and like clawed feet. More, yeah, more a little bit more primal, I guess, than that. That's what I like about goblins, at least. Though they can have the other stuff. Don't get me wrong, but it's, yeah, definitely small, no hair. Can't be a good guy.
okay, yeah, beautiful. I love it. So just to kind of wrap up here, a couple more questions. If a new artist wants to start doing sort of classic fantasy art, what's the simplest path to getting good without getting overwhelmed, I guess? Like, where would be a good place to start and kind of hone your craft?
Definitely draw with pen from observation, then memory, then imagination. Like, that is so intensely like the way to get good, because with classic fantasy, you're not just drawing whatever you want. You want it to be, if it's classic fantasy, you want it to be believable. You want it to be something that is realistic. And so you need to start with proportion and line and making sure that those fit right. Because if you start painting right away, you're going to be painting or essentially polishing a turd if the proportions aren't right. You're going to be spending an hour painting or rendering an arm that is too big, for it to look realistic. So you have to watch out for that. It's like, if this happened to every artist that exists ever, but if like you start a drawing and you start from the face, right, and you draw out, and all of a sudden you're running out of space on the page, and so you just try and fit your character into and now all of a sudden like his like legs are like super short. you're like, oh man, that ain't good. Like making sure that like that example happens regardless of if the page is short or not, because you will have your own biases. Like if I seen this so much, and it's going to sound like kind of funny, but like your preferences as a person will come through. If you like people with with like a big butt or a chunky, when you draw characters, it's just going to show up like as a wider hips, or if you like big muscly guys, like you're going to be drawing characters that are big and muscly a little bit more than what you see. And so when you're drawing for reference, you're kind of like, the goal is to eliminate those biases and just get what's there on the page, in the world onto the page, so you know that you can, and then you can sort of adjust it. So yeah, sorry, the long answer, but definitely like draw from observation, then memory, then imagination, eliminate those biases, plant that into your brain, and then start to change it.
Beautiful. And so Do you have a piece of advice that you wish someone gave you, like, 10 years earlier, or even beyond, maybe when you were just getting started?
Um, I would say I wish someone sooner told me that that my that my art is me and they are inseparable. Um, and the vice versa. It has to be the case. Um, Once you start to separate that, you start to lose a lot of the passion, and you also start to lose like what makes you you. And I feel like my art would be a whole lot different, but I'd like it a lot more. And so always remembering that your art is you, and you know a lot of people try to separate that to uh to protect their ego. If my art's bad, I'm not bad. And that, I mean, obviously, if your art's bad, like you're not a bad person or whatever, but it does mean that you're bad at art. like it's just there's a truth there, and that like you can't ignore. And when you connect the two, um you put so much more investment into it, because you're not just working on your art, you're working on yourself and you're figuring things out. And I just wish someone told me that a whole lot sooner, um, than I kind of realized it, through my own journey.
Yeah. Wow. Um, wow, that was beautiful. Do you where oh, what were you going to say something?
Nope, that's it. That's it.
Uh so where can people follow your work? Is there anything kind of you want to plug, or anything you want the community to look out for?
Yeah, I would say my Twitch, you guys can always come ask me about any art related questions or M or whatever related questions. So the Goblin Works Twitch TV. I don't really plug a whole lot of my YouTube recently. I have a Discord if anybody wants to join and hang out. I sometimes pop into voice and late at night or whatever. And then I guess finally, I would say I'm working on a game with Miles. I call him Bryles, but I'm working on a game with Miles called Witherhome, and it's a little indie MMO, or not MMO. No, it's not an indie MMO. It's a little indie horror game, meant for 4 people to goof around in and have fun and laugh at their friends dying, and have your friends laugh at you while you die. It's a it's a fun little thing. And then obviously Monsters and Memories.
What do you think that modern fantasy art forgets the most when it tries to look cool?
Um, okay. I think it has to do with like a lot of modern stuff has this pillar that like puts it above everything else of like subverting expectations. Um, where that tends to be the goal instead of being truly and concisely based off of like something that they need or an archetype. They'll go, okay, how can we change this? And I think it will change in itself. And so that's one thing. The other thing is depending too much on color theory, which can lead to these same colors and same color palettes that you'll see, from game to game, even because people are depending on those same colors. And so you can get, like, for me, like, I think a blue ocean with like a deep blue, and it's just like there's like the shadow of a shark or something off, and that's still blue. Like that's just as powerful, even more powerful than if you were to add like the artistic touch of like, okay, let's add some complementary colors to that and get like a little orange there or something. Like, so letting a color just be a color, and having it being mood first instead of relying on so much color theory to do a lot of that work. And then also finally, I'd say like when you make choices out of fear or pressure, it ends up overriding the best choice for your world, and the best choice for your specific design problem. Like they can align, but often they don't, and people can sense that stuff a mile away. Where like, oh, they made like this choice because it's either like inclusive or it's hitting like a mark or whatever, a little checkbox for them. Like people can sense that a mile away. So just make it for your world. That's a difference between Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, in my opinion, and Amazon's Lord of the Rings. Huge difference there. But yeah, that's what I would say, is just make the best decisions for the world. And you see that, you even see that in like what is it? In Wizard of Earthsea, where they had some adaptations and for Wizard of Earthsea, like the television series, and frankly, they made quite a butchery of it. They made Ged, like they changed his skin color for some reason. Not to get any into political stuff, but that wasn't true to what Ursula K. Le Guin wrote, and so I just felt it was wrong. And so, yeah, just most on that other side of like, okay, don't make choices from fear. You want to subvert expectations and follow your intuition when it comes to color and color theory and mood and all that stuff. And when you don't do that, I think it kind of suffers.
I was gonna ask if you were gonna play the game yourself, maybe as like a not like a secret character, but maybe like a character on stream, or if you were interested in playing the game, is there a class that you're interested in, or and anything along those lines? Okay.
Yeah, I 100% am. I'm gonna play this game, and I haven't been playing it because it's been like not nose to the grindstone. It's like we're getting to it. But once the game is out and I know that my character is gonna not be reset, right? Like even like we're playing by the same rules. Devs are playing by the same rules as everybody else. I'll probably have a character cool. that I do on stream, and then I'll probably have a character that I don't do on stream. I might just do both. I don't know. But in general, I'm probably not going to accept like any like gold or anything from anybody random. Like I just want it to be like that kind of pure experience.
Yeah, like a solo self-found, as they're calling it these days.
Well, no, it's less like solo self-found. It's more like no streamer privilege sort of thing. I just want like to be like a normal player, because I will still like make deals with people. I still want. I think I remember one of the play tests. I was asking if anybody wanted to or had their cracked staffs that they wanted to sell, and I'd give them one whole silver for it. And it was like, oh man, what a terrible deal for them. What a terrible deal. But there's awesome. A little bit of a goblin in me.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The mischievous goblin coming out.
Yeah, and so yeah, I'm definitely going to be playing. I'm going to be playing more once the characters don't reset. And my like when I joined this team, I just played retail EverQuest for a little bit to see what it was like, and it wasn't hitting it for me. And a lot of that was the aesthetic, and then also looking into it, it was like I wasn't quite sure about the way that they're doing like monetization and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, well, this type of game seems like it's the game that I would play. And like after playing Monsters and Memories now, I like it more than Classic WoW. Like I realized how many decisions Classic WoW made that just made it more of like a solo experience. Even though you do group sometimes, it's like it pales in comparison to M&M. And and so like when I'm looking for a game to play, I'm looking for sandwich combat. I'm looking for like to be able to look at my character, to have slow decisions, that matter, and to venture in and to hang out with friends and to have downtime. It's literally the perfect game for me. And so, yes, I'll be playing quite a bit. I'm quite a casual, so quite a bit means a lot different things to a lot of different people. But it's probably going to be, yes, my go-to MMO for sure, guaranteed.
Same for me, absolutely. I'm hoping it's my main game, and a couple other things, but Monsters and Memories will be it for me. I'm kind of interested. So you mentioned you played retail EverQuest, and I'm kind of sad because the game has kind of gone through so many changes. It's kind of a shadow of its former self, in my personal opinion. But like, Monsters and Memories really encapsulates like sort of what made EverQuest great, and also like kind of early World of Warcraft. So that's kind of interesting. But I'm with you there too. So I played sort of classic World of Warcraft, and I lean more towards Monsters and Memories for sure. So yeah.
Yep.
Just another interesting observation too is like, how modern games now, everything is, a friend told me this once, like it's a game where like, now a lot of decisions made have to be like, okay, well, what is my most damaging ability that I can use in this situation? Whereas Monsters and Memories, it gives you just so many other options, so many different ways to interact with the world. You don't have to just constantly think like, okay, we just all need to be doing a bunch of damage. So it's really nice to just kind of take a step back and enjoy a world like that.
And it's like your bag space forces downtime, because now you have to go sell, and once you're there, you might as well have these other two things that you want to do. And what about my spells? Oh, I need to get updated on this. Oh, but there's also this quest thing, and so but then there's this pressure of everybody else, but everybody else is also getting lost in it, and so it's not just dropping stuff off and then going back in. It's I love the loop so far. It's like, and the campfires, when we brought that in, it was like a light went off where it was like, oh my god, that's it.
I love that so much too. Yeah. Oh man, the campfires. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and once we get mountain, it's gonna change a whole lot more, and I'm excited. I'm super excited.
Yeah, same for me. And I tell everybody this too. It's a matter of time for me as well. Like, obviously, I like to stream for fun. I'm gonna be kind of making some content here and there when I can, and I'm not too great at editing, and it kind of takes me a while. So realistically, I just feel like I'm gonna go at like my own little snail's pace. But I'm gonna enjoy that. I plan to have a character where I can group with people, and then maybe just kind of like a solo character for when I'm on at odd hours. But I wanted to ask you, what class are you interested in playing? I'm assuming you're going to be a goblin as your race, or
Yes.
But what class are you the most interested in? Like thematically.
Right now, I'm jumping in between Goblin Shaman.
Okay.
Because I just love that that sort of like fantasy. Maybe Goblin Fighter, maybe Goblin Archer.
Interesting.
And so I'm jumping in between those three right now. And I feel like those three also hit like some nice what's it called, like nice role variation too. So I get a little bit of everything, a little bit of DPS. I could be a tank here, or I could be a buffer, or a little bit of heal. It seems like I'm hitting a lot of the options that Monsters and Memories has to offer. But when Deep Gnome comes out, I'm gonna play a Deep Gnome wizard. Like, Joaquin has done such a good job with the animations for Deep Gnome that there's no way I'm not playing Deep Gnome.
Interesting.
As well.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I know a lot of people are excited about the deep races, and I'm kind of more interested in the world of it and this. I plan to just be a human. I know that's kind of basic, but I just think it's a really interesting concept. Humans in these like fantasy landscapes,
Yeah, they're the staple for sure. Only at night was the population of goblins trumping the population of humans. Only at night would the goblins stay up and we'd see a rise in, yeah, because we had those server counters and we had them by race, and goblins every once in a while would just go oh and just outpace the humans.
That's awesome.
I think they'd be the most. I think they'd be the most popular if they had more classes. That's just me. But also, once the Deep Gnome comes out, I feel like their popularity is only going to go down because that archetype is slightly overlapping, and there's going to be a little bit of a split.
Interesting.
That's my theory, at least.
Yeah. And it would be cool. I know you can't get too deep into the specifics. It would be interesting to see goblins explored as like not necessarily a deep version, but just kind of maybe like an ice region or like, you know, a fire region or swamp, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely they will be explored in those manners, like ice, fire, sea, whatever. Like we already have aqua goblins, but there is a concept, and I'll have to send it to you as well, for deep goblins.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. This is something that I'm very interested in this, and so I want to. It'd be cool to get your perspective. So this is something I ask pretty much everybody. So you know, like, so traditional MMO games, they have, you know, tank, heal, DPS. It's kind of like the holy trinity. But games like Monsters and Memories and like a lot of these indie projects, there's sort of a harkening back to the good old days where there was a fourth pillar, sort of like the support class, you know, enchanter, bard,
the CC.
Yeah, buffing, debuffing, crowd control, that kind of thing. So, you know, that's all back. But do you think, like, within that formula, do you think there's any more room to kind of iterate on all that? Do you think that MMO classes are solved at this point? Or do you think there's more room to kind of innovate? Maybe like a potential fifth pillar that we don't know about? Or do you kind of, I guess the question would be is like, you know, it's in the realm of like a fantasy setting, you know, I kind of feel like, I personally think all of that kind of feels real good right now, but do you think there's any more room to do anything there?
I think there has been exploration of this before, but I'm not sure it ends up looking like something you think it would. So it'd be like a merchant class or some sort of, yeah, like some sort of thing that really leans on leaning into like the professions and the social aspect and not so much combat. And so you're able to do like mercantile stuff, or, you know, and maybe there is some room for that. And those seem to be kind of covered for us in our secondary, you know, professions that we can do, you know, like you can be a miner or whatever, or you could be and those in itself like can kind of be a class that, and for Monsters and Memories, like you can just choose to be one of those things, or, you know, a couple of those things, and like really lean into it. And it is in a sense like a class. It's not the same sort of combat class that you'd expect though. So it's like, okay, well, do we want them in our group? Probably not. If they're just like, I don't know, like sorting loot or something, you know. There'd have to be a good reason for the. I don't know if we are the game to explore that, just because of how you know ingrained into the old sort of like formula we are. Maybe there's a chance there. I know that there's been a lot of brainstorming internally on how things could go, but they might just all fit into what we already sort of know. That being said, there has been non-combat like class discussions, you know, like, oh, what about this? What about it? I don't know if it's gone anywhere. Because we're really just we're hankering down on what we need to get done. But like the team knows of that stuff and thinks about that stuff for sure.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I love the grounded kind of way that you guys look at things. You know, it's like, you're not trying to like sell a dream or just kind of like, oh, it's gonna be, you know, like this grand scope of stuff. It's just kind of like head down working, and I love it. Yeah, it's interesting. And it's also kind of like, you know, it's like I'm a bit of a foodie, you know, it's like I love just like a nice traditional pizza, you know. Pizza is
Yeah,
good
yeah.
if you just stick to the recipe, it's simple. But when you start getting like all crazy, I guess it's kind of weird analogy, but you know, when you start putting like, I don't know, like burger or, you know, just something that it's not on it.
Yeah.
It's best to keep it simple, you know. So
Speaking of keeping it simple, let me share something
oh
with you.
yeah, I'm
So
gonna.
you have something to put up on screen.
Oh man, I love that. Yeah. See, there you go.
Classic pizza. Do not get the fundamentals right, get the bread right, so
Yeah.
it's crispy, but it's soft, but
Oh
it's
man,
light, so
I
it's not too
love
heavy.
that.
Yeah. That's I love making pizza.
And is that a Costco thing I see of like mushrooms, like that big thing of mushrooms that Costco sells? That's
Yeah.
awesome. I'm a
Well,
huge
we
Costco
we
fan
were
as well.
we were trying some of that stuff out. Uh, but I don't know how successful the mushrooms were, but I was like, oh, I like mushrooms. Let's try it out. And yeah, honestly, the way to go is just a classic pizza: cheese, bread, sauce.
You know,
That's it.
I'm exactly the same way. I'm exactly the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess there's also like you can go a little bit crazy, you know, when it's the time to go crazy, you know, it's like a style of pizza. You don't go for, in my opinion at least, you don't go to Pizza Hut for like a classic, you know, Roman style pizza or a flatbread pizza or something, but instead, you know, you go for like it's this greasy and I'm just gonna lay this down. You're like, okay, like, and so there are times and places for other types of pizzas, don't get me wrong, but the best has always been for me just classic stuff, and I feel like now it's the same thing with MMOs actually.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, I'm exactly the same. And you know, I realize that as I get older. Like I'm 38. I'm gonna be 39. And yeah, lately, like yeah, over the last few years or so, there really hasn't been anything that really sort of speaks to me. You know, so I used to be kind of on the search always for the next big thing and just kind of following the hype. And but as I got older, I just kind of fall back into the things that you know I enjoy and kind of make me feel good, and instead of chasing the next big thing. So yeah, definitely.
What were those for you? Just out of
Um,
curiosity.
You mean like games that I was chasing that was kind of the next big thing?
Oh
Um,
no,
I,
what's your like your go-to? What do you fall
oh,
back to?
yeah. So well, I really like classic EverQuest. So I was playing on like an emulated server, Project 1999, but more recently I'm playing on Project Quorum, which is like, it's the first 5 expansions. It basically ends around Planes of Power or so, which is like the perfect ending of EverQuest. So yeah, it's definitely kind of like classic EverQuest. I've been playing a lot of sort of Valheim. I got into Valheim a few years ago, and I'm playing that with my wife. It's kind of she doesn't like MMOs in particular, but she does like kind of co-op things that are more kind of just like, you know, just like just you, not like other people in the world. I'd
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
I'd like to get her more into MMOs, but it's just not her thing. She's not much of a gamer. And actually, funny story, I always tell this too. I tried to get her into Monsters and Memories. So I've been following Sean for a while, just because, you know, obviously Sean worked on EverQuest, and I follow him for all his the EverQuest interviews that he was doing. And so sorry, not to change the subject here or anything. So I had been
Don't worry.
following Monsters and Memories for a while, but I didn't personally participate in any of the playtests. I was just kind of waiting until everything got more fleshed out. So I played on, I think it was the November 2024 playtest. It was, we kind of caught the tail end of it, and it was one of like the laggier playtests, and I kind of just threw her into it like the last couple hours, and I feel
Yeah,
bad.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, come on, we gotta go. It's gonna end soon. And you know, she doesn't understand the concept of like auto attacking and like scribing all your spells and whatnot. But anyway, to go back to your question about just like comfort cozy stuff, I mean, honestly too, just I just feel like I have this like huge Steam playlist, but like Dark Souls, I love the original Dark Souls game, Dark Souls 2. I feel like nowadays, you know, people throw around the term like Souls like, and that's just kind of a thing now, but I really did like it back when
Like
before it was like super
Souls
popular.
like Souls like is like hard game, you know, like quote that's
Yeah.
okay. That's a Souls like, yeah.
But I will say, I like how, I mean, even Monsters and Memories does this to some extent because, you know, the influence isn't just EverQuest, but what I really like is how those stories are told in worlds through kind of like the environment, exploration, you know, maybe like an item placed in a certain way or like a ruined doorway or something like that. It's not just like a cutscene that explains everything or like a sort of an exposition dump. So I like that aspect of it quite a bit. I like kind of like flavor text on you know, like some items might have like a little snippet of lore, and I feel like that's interesting. I feel like Dark Souls kind of really leaned in that, and
Yes, yeah, it did.
but yeah, so those are some things that I really enjoy. I like the Final Fantasy series, things of that nature. Do you play? Oh, sorry.
I'm just playing through Final Fantasy IV with the missus actually right now.
Oh, nice, very nice. Wow.
Mm.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are you playing anything yourself? Do you have like a sort of a cozy game that you enjoy?
Um, I have LAN parties, you know, about twice a month or so, and so we just play a bunch of old Xbox games through System Link. So like Splinter Cell, Gears of War,
Nice.
Halo, that sort of. Splinter Cell is the coolest thing. It's like
Yeah.
being able to do a stealth 2v2 in PvP with it's fun. Horde mode for Gears of War. So we're all playing against the AI or whatever. You know, there's a lot to explore. You know, like we can play like Bomberman or like Fusion Frenzy or you know like just fun little party games that we can play together. Or like Forza, so we like do racing every once in a while, change it up a bit. It's
Nice.
kind of fun. Other than that, maybe like I would say probably I haven't been playing a whole lot of games. The only game that I've really been playing uh, other than doing art is like every once in a while my friends will like say, hey, let's play a game or whatever. So we'll play like a round of like Speed Freaks or like just that Warhammer racing car game or shooting car game sort of thing, or like Helldivers or something. Just
Nice.
to
Yeah.
but other than that, I guess I've been going back through my catalog on my own when I'm not playing with friends. So I beat the Splinter Cell trilogy just recently, or not trilogy, but I played one through Chaos Theory, and then played all the way through Gears of War with my fiance as well. And so that over the holiday, that was really fun. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Not
Yeah.
much MMOs recently though.
You know
Not
what's
many
a
MMOs.
you know what's a beautiful thing though? It's nice to play things that aren't like what you know, like an MMO all the time exactly. It is nice to kind of walk away, try other things. Like it kind of makes you like touch grass or whatever, as they say. It's not good to just kind of
Yeah.
immerse yourself fully like one dimensionally in that. I feel like that's kind of what I've been doing lately, and it's nice to kind of take a little break and do some other stuff. So I could definitely respect that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little breath of fresh air. Like Final
Yeah.
Fantasy IV is great. You know, it's like okay, we're sitting here and we're reading and we're looking through the story and we're appreciating Amano's character designs and you know it's enjoying the music utmost. You know, and
Yeah.
waiting for that next story beat. It's great.
Yeah. Final Fantasy IV is amazing. Yeah, for sure. It's one of my favorites. Yeah, definitely warrants a replay sometime soon. It's been a few years.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite Final Fantasy?
It's definitely in between 4, 7, and 9.
Interesting. Mine is
I
6
would
and
say
7. Not like the meme, but
6 and
actually
7.
6, 7.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, I grew up playing. I haven't played through. I haven't played through all of them. Like I never played 1 or 2, or 3. You know, because I played 4, which is the
Yeah.
American 2.
Those were kind of hard to find. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There was like a whole mislabeling and
Yeah, and then 7 was the second Final Fantasy that I played over at my auntie's house as my parents were away, and they had a PlayStation 1, and I just played the crap out of that, and I beat the first disc in like a week as a kid, you know,
That's awesome.
just playing that after school. That was fun. But yeah, so Final Fantasy 7 definitely hits hard. I love the music in it.
yeah.
Final Fantasy 4 is also great.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of the best soundtracks of all time for sure.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and I always lean on the original. I'm not huge into the remakes that much. I really, really love the original. It's just such a beautiful story.
Yeah.
It's literally almost perfect, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I did play a little bit of the remakes, and I played the remake, and I 100%ed it, or 99%ed it, or something.
Nice.
I enjoyed it. It doesn't replace the first game by any means, but it is still quite fun. You know, like it's definitely not the same. Definitely doesn't replace, but still very good.
Yeah, it is nice to see the characters kind of like hyper realistic or like realized, you know, versus like the tiny little like polygons that we remember. So
you're like that's what I thought that was it was in my head back then. You know, like seeing them because your imagination went wild or whatever. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
yeah. Trying to think like what else here. So yeah, MMOs and yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, you're not quite like the MMO sort of aficionado that you think. It's really cool to have like these more other varied tastes, I guess you could say.
Well, I still did play a decent amount of MMOs. It's not like I don't go back to them recently, you know, but like I played classic WoW or vanilla WoW back in the day. I only got to like level 28 or something like that on my warlock. And the last day that I had on my sub, I just like I didn't even feel like leveling or doing any dungeons. I just wanted to hang out with everybody, you know, and say my goodbyes. And it was like because I was a kid then, and you know I couldn't afford it. Or my parents was like, "What is he doing? We're not going to let him keep playing this game."
Yeah.
So, but I ended up going back, and I played a lot during Kata and Pandaria all the way through. I love the WoW PvP. I think WoW PvP is like probably the most top tier PvP. It's almost a perfect game if you're to like isolate it. Like I love it.
Yeah. Agree.
And then I played a lot of RuneScape. I think RuneScape might be my first MMO. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, played a little bit of MapleStory, played a little bit of RuneScape. I never got very far. I was always like in comparison to people that No Life did or whatever. I was very casual, you know, until it hit like, some of that later WoW expansion stuff where that's where I would go hard into PvP and just essentially like dive into that pretty decently.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like yeah, no, you pretty much nailed it. I haven't played RuneScape myself, but a lot of people seem to really like it, and I feel like I would as well. I just need to set aside the time. But and then definitely agree, like PvP in World of Warcraft is I mean, to this day,
That's
I don't think anything has done PvP to that extent, like especially arenas and like the,
oh,
you
dude,
know,
it's so good. BGs are my
yeah,
favorite. They're
battlegrounds.
so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so shame it looks like Ashes of Creation. Not to go down that whole rabbit hole, but it looks like they were kind of they were going to be the PvP sort of MMO that didn't pan out. Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
interesting. You know, this is oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, it's like something I think about. You know, it's obviously, you know, we can't go back. We can't truly recreate those good old days. And a lot of the sort of classic MMO enjoyers, you know, we're now kind of, you know, everyone's kind of aging out, and it's hard to attract kind of newer people into that genre. You know, a lot of companies are kind of exploring like, you know, the mobile route, because, you know, that's bigger in sort of like other non-Western countries. It's just, you know, everyone just kind of has a phone, and it's easier to kind of access that. So it's, I don't know, it's interesting. It's a genre that's kind of been, I don't know, at least over the last couple years, you know, there's been a lot of like Kickstarter scams, and, you know, a lot of kind of hopes and dreams, but not much delivery. And, you know, just with recent stuff, yeah, like Ashes of Creation, new world, that kind of thing. And then, you know, obviously people in like that are deep into World of Warcraft, EverQuest, is just kind of, I don't know, maybe there's something to be said about this genre has kind of stagnated, and that's why people are looking for you know, just you know what I'm saying, right? It's like
Yeah.
yeah, it's
There,
interesting to think
there's
about.
there's this interesting dynamic, I think, that is happening with Monsters and Memories. And look, like I can't know. You know, we're still not released. We don't know if we're a success or whatever yet. But there is something to be said about people that are making a video game for the sake of having it be fun and having all the decisions be made around that and for that, instead of being like, okay, well, how are we going to monetize it? How are we going to recoup however much the development costs were? Is this even possible? Like, like all that stuff kind of needs to be accounted for before it gets even greenlit, or, you know, in terms of like any other MMO. And so, but we don't have to do that. We can make the game for the sake of having it being fun. We can make the game for the sake of it being a good world to live in. And, you know, in terms of like keeping the lights on, like this game was made by a bunch of people with a passion, not people that were in it for the dime, you know, or for the dollar. And it's like, because of that, we kind of are able to say, like, yeah, we're not going anywhere. And because of that, I think people can get invested into it a little bit. Not to glaze MMO or M&M too much, but like we can essentially, in my estimation, we're kind of like unkillable in a sense, because if we don't make money, like, so what? Like we're already not making money. We've already
Yeah.
made this amount of progress, and we're going to continue to do so. You know, even if you know we don't go like insane amounts of success or whatever. And so we can be that, and we can be that MMO for people that need a home or want a home, or, you know, don't want the seasons to just undo all their work that they just did because everybody needs a treadmill or whatever. It's like we don't have to be that. We don't have those incentives. We don't have those people telling us, you know, to make our quarterly and or whatever, you know. And so our game design doesn't have to. The people can sense that a mile away, and we don't have that at all. And so I think that gives us like an immense strength in this sort of I don't know, situation, right? Or environment. Or what's the right word? Yeah, environment is pretty close.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say it's a tremendous strength to have that. Yeah, you're not beholden to like a big group of, you know, corporate investors or whatever, and it's great, and yeah, people see that, and I love it. Yeah, I love how a large majority of the game has been streamed live, basically, for the most part. Everything's open, transparent, and great group of people for sure.
We have our secrets here and there.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I'm with you, and yeah, it's I'm very hopeful, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I'm with you. Yeah, I'm gonna certainly enjoy the journey, not try to rush things. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have a couple of solo characters because I'm gonna play kind of like at odd hours. I pretty much work like a 9 to 5, so I'm gonna try to play early or like late at night, weekends here and there, while also trying to juggle life like everybody else. So
yeah, totally.
I did have like ambitions at one point, like, oh, I'm gonna be the world first 60 or whatever, but I just feel like for that kind of older crowd, it's just not feasible for me these days.
Those ambitions for me have gone long, but like I hit Gladiator once and I was like, okay, that's enough for me. I don't in it was Pandaria, I think, and I hit Gladiator and I was like, it's a lot to keep this up. It's a lot to actually like put in the effort to be this good, and it's a lot. And that was during my heyday. I mean, like now is, I think I played the recent DMC5, and after like 2 or 3 hours of gameplay, like my fingers hurt. I'm too old for this. I'm only 30.
Yeah.
31. Well.
Oh, okay. Wow. Interesting. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, it's just tough to commit to that kind of time these days. Just feel like the world is so different now, Yeah, so it's interesting. I was gonna ask. So how far did you get in PvP? In WoW.
How far?
Oh yeah, as far as
what's my rating?
Yeah, like did you do any like arenas or mostly battlegrounds? I feel like the arenas were really fun. It's been a while since I played it.
Arenas, I was just okay with. My game knowledge wasn't nearly as good as it could have been for me to really land and do arenas like well with my friends. We played a little bit, but it was never like something that I just that I grinded much. But I loved BGs. I loved BGs so much, and I loved the weird roles that you can play instead of just like killing everybody or throwing in like I was a warlock, so Seed of Destruction AoE damage was like insane. You could top charts easily with something like that, but like doing things like being like an exclusive peeler was just like some of the best things ever. Where you like all your goal is just make sure this guy doesn't, or like being exclusively like CC as a warlock, as you're gearing up and your damage sucks, and it's a new expansion, everybody's already all the way ahead, and you're like, well, what can I do as a warlock? Like, I'm just gonna get like stomped on anytime that someone comes for the flag or so instead you go, okay, well, what I can do is I can interrupt people at the right time, I can fear people at the right time, I can make sure that our guys don't die, or their healer misses their heal, and like, or a critical heal, or so that was some of the things that I absolutely loved with PvP, was like being able to fulfill like a specific role. There, as a destruction warlock, you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna wait till this guy just pops one of his biggest heals, and now I'm going to throw in like 2 chaos bolts and a soul fire and absolutely melt like his entire health bar. There's some really fun stuff with that. That's like, oh man, I kind of want to go play WoW PvP a little bit.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I always get hyped just kind of talking about it, and man, it's just yeah, not to sort of nerd out over my life story, but so the MMO that I probably played the most, just because of where I was in my life, was Final Fantasy 14 online. Especially like
Yeah.
in the early days, I feel like it still kind of felt, kind of classic. And I think that, I mean, the last couple expansions I didn't care for so much, but I still have an active subscription. I highly recommend it too. It's kind of interesting, but they have an interesting PvP mode there that I think you might enjoy if you liked it. But yeah, I get kind of hyped as well. Are you gonna play PvP on Monsters and Memories? Maybe dabble in the PvP server, or
Oh man, that's a hard question because apparently it's pretty brutal.
yeah,
So
that's what I hear. I
no, I-
talked to the PvP legend IGT, and yeah,
uh,
it was wild.
yeah. So we'll see. I'm gonna go PVE first. I'm going no boxing for sure.
Yeah.
And then if there's an RP server that gets made, I'm gonna do that. I love when I played World of Warcraft, it was RP PvP servers always because as like a goblin, I
Sorry.
love like shit talking other races in the game just for the sake of it, or like their class or whatever.
Yeah.
Like confusing, a blood elf as like how do you guys procreate? You're both female. Like what's going on? Like just the fun little like uh
Yeah.
pokes at like you know, I was always so I was an undead usually in WoW, and I'd always poke fun at Belfs come TV or after TBC. It was always poke fun at Belfs.
Oh,
It's
that's
just
awesome. Yeah, I do like that aspect of it. Just random EverQuest memory. I think goblins on that game would like they would call you like, "Hey, you're a stupid whatever, like stupid human. I'm gonna, I'm gonna kill you now and
yeah.
eat you or something like that." So that's really fun. Um, yeah, I was gonna ask, do you have a favorite zone in sort of World of Warcraft? Anything that really kind of feels good to you or kind of cozy? Something that you mentioned you enjoyed during the last days of your sub in the early days, just kind of hanging out, talking with everybody. Is there a zone that you enjoy? Maybe the Undead City or surrounding areas?
I would say actually my favorite for sure has to be Crossroads. Like
Nice.
I spent most of I'm an alcoholic, and so I'll play a lot of different classes, a lot of different races. Mostly undead actually, so maybe not so many different races, but um, I always ended up like leveling up to. I swear I'd have like a 60 or two 60s by now, like in terms of levels, if I didn't have so many alts. But I have I played so many alts, and I always came across and like hung out at Crossroads, and I just love Baron's chat.
Oh
It
yeah.
was so it reminds me of why I love MMOs because it's like people are looking for groups, and while you're looking for groups, people are shit talking or like talking like throwing in a Chuck Norris joke or asking where Mancrick's wife is, and like it's always like this back. I love that social aspect, and
Yeah.
some of that kind of died when Dungeon Finder, Raid Finder kind of hit because people weren't looking for groups and there's less talk in there. And but at the same time, yeah, Crossroads is still for sure. And like just your eyes bleeding for some reason, it's great. That orange is so heavy in at least in uh, Valley of Trials. That orange is so harsh.
That's immediately what I thought of when I thought back. Is I thought of just the colors of it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love the social
It's
aspect
funny
of it
because
too. Just that's what made the world feel alive. Just all the chatter. But please continue. Sorry to
yeah,
interrupt
yeah, the Valley of Trials, I mean, like you go listen to the soundtrack of it and you compare it to the two, and it's like the the ambient music in that is just like it's like there's some desolation here. There's some like struggle and strife, and there's some like some lost history that feels like sad, but you're hit with these like almost like, you know, this like cheese sauce orange, you know, but like it still fits so well. They did a really really good job with classic WoW, I would say, or vanilla WoW
Yeah.
back in the day. And I mean, all the zone art and everything still looks amazing. Like the art team and even retail
Yeah.
do a really good job.
Were you like in your heyday of WoW, were you already kind of going down your your career path as an artist, or do you and also too, like whenever you play, do you look at games kind of like from that analytical kind of artistic sense of like, well, why did they choose those colors, or why did they do it this way, or that's kind of interesting. Do you ever kind of look at stuff like that, or is it possible for you to just kind of shut off your brain and just enjoy it, or are you always kind of,
You can turn it off and on. Like just experiencing it and just playing it for the game, for sure. Like, but there are certain times where you're just like blown back and you're like, whoa, why does this even make this? It's like it's so good that you like make a mental note to return to it, or like you can't even stop, but like try and figure out why it's so good, and it almost adds to that moment because there's like so many things that you can appreciate. And I mean, when did I start my like my pursuit of like an art career? Very early, like grade 9 or something.
oh
I
wow.
was always like into art or did art. And then eventually I just said, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, and that's what I spent all of like all of my classes. Like I found a way to like double up essentially on like design classes and like stuff that would allow me to do what I want. And then uh, anybody that told me differently, I was like, I don't care. I'm just going to do this. And then I'm still here, sort of like pushing that and hoping that things end up working out. Because all the I haven't had a success yet. When it comes to like financial success, it's like it's been rough. It's still like on its way, and hopefully things will pan out. But in terms of that, it's always just been art. Always been doing what I'm too stubborn to listen to people about. Okay, go do this instead. Do this to support your dream. Eventually, it's like no, I only have one life. I and it kind of sounds a little bit cheesy. I think I remember this one thing from this one like little quote or I guess paragraph or whatever from, I think it was Jim Carrey, but he was like, I you only you don't want to do something that you don't want to do and then fail at it. You might as well do the thing that you want to do and then fail at that, because then you have this like, okay, I tried my best, I went for it. Because you can do something you don't want to do and still fail, and so that's just screw that.
Yeah.
It's only recently that sort of sentiment has come to light, and I was like, well, I'm glad that I went my route.
Absolutely. I love that. That is so beautiful. Can I just say, you just reminded me of something. It's so funny you mentioned Jim Carrey, because I watched this thing last night and I shared it with my wife. I thought it was very, very powerful. And yeah, it's this Jim Carrey kind of collection of like quotes and like his life. And yeah, I think his father was like a comedian, or he was a very funny guy and kind of was interested in going down that route, but he was interested in kind of supporting his family, and he kind of compromised and got just like a desk job that he was eventually laid off from, and that
Yeah,
hurts,
that's exactly where that came from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's that really resonated with me. Yeah, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I just literally watched that last night. Wow, it's man, it's deep. Yeah, for sure. And I respect that so much, It's and I can tell you too, like for me, I just get so mentally drained by the end of the day from work. And I have my hobbies and passions and that kind of thing. And it's just so hard whenever a job just kind of sucks everything out of you, and your passion
Yeah,
doesn't resonate as much. Like you're just exhausted by the end of it, and you kind of feel like you're half-assing it, you know. And anyway,
yes, yeah, yeah. It's rough when you're in a situation where you go to work, you had a really hard day, like nothing went right, and you finally get, you know, you step inside to your house to be like, okay, like, and then you wake up, and then you have to go to work because all that was a dream, you know, and then you go do your work, and it's the same shitty day, and then you get home, and you're like, okay, I just had essentially 2 days of like pain, even though that it was just like one, because you know all of it was like a dream. And then now is your time to put in the work, to do what you need to do and do what you want to do, you know, because it is a second job. To that's how I treated it for a very long time. Was okay, I'm getting home, I'm doing artwork. You know, of course there was video games that always like kind of took me away from it every once in a while. But ultimately it was like, okay, like I'm stepping home, and I get in the door, and it's time to eat and then get to work. And then you know you're burning that candle like really heavily when you do that.
yeah, yeah, beautiful, awesome. Well, I think we got it. I think we got it. That was great. Man, yeah, thank you so much. This was amazing.